Kelly, can you hear me? Okay, if we can ask the panelists to please come and be seated, we'll introduce Dr. Rollins to kick us off this evening.
Is the computer supposed to be on? Let's see. Girls, this has been a fun day. The computer's on. Shall I just share that with the group or? Wind, weather, hail, it doesn't matter. Great educators come out, don't they? And interested patrons and business leaders, we're so very glad to have you here at Har-Ber High School. I know we've got a great evening planned, a lot of good discussion, but at the heart of it all is the opportunity for each of us to contribute in our own way in terms of what we would like future services to be like. So welcome. We're so glad to have you here this evening. I hope you have an opportunity to share your perspective, and I hope you have an opportunity to help really set the stage for a great program in the future. We're glad to have you here at Har-Ber. Shall we begin?
Hey, it's playing something. Oh, that's why. Okay, I'm Jennifer Turner, and I've been asked to bring to you a Why Are We Here statement. My name is Jennifer Turner. I'm from the Guy Fenner Co-op. I'm the CTE coordinator in Western Arkansas, and it's going to be very fast and furious what I share with you. If I can, I think I'll just use this, and we'll go forward. And so as we come together, the reason... Oh, that's hard. This is talking to me while I'm talking. So, my name is Jennifer Turner. I'm from the Guy Fenner Co-op. I'm the CTE coordinator in Western Arkansas, and it's going to be very fast and furious what I share with you. That's really hard to hear yourself talking right back at you. So, we're here because we have been asked to have a stakeholder meeting for the Strengthening CTE for the 21st Century Act, also known as Perkins 5. It was signed by Donald Trump on July 1st of 2018, and then it became law. It went through very quickly. It does have some new provisions that will go into effect on the 1920 school year and the full implementation in the 2021 school year. This is really a great time for us to rethink what we've been doing. If we look at what Perkins 4 all the way back to 2006, and here we are in 2018, how much has happened in that time and how much has changed in that time. We didn't even have iPhones back then. So that's just a small piece of where and how much the world has changed around us. We do have a great time now of low unemployment. We do know that there are some huge skills gaps out there. We know that there's 1 million healthcare occupations that are going unfilled. There are, by the year 2025, will be 2 million manufacturing jobs that will be unfilled. And that is just so drastic for our communities. And so we're excited and we're hopeful that this will be able to help us meet those needs of our business and industry, as well as provide students a better life for themselves. When we look at the countdown to Perkins, it's a lot. And just so you know, all your directors and coordinators will have this presentation so they can share it with you. But what we are called to today is stakeholder meetings around the state to bring the interested parties together to give them a good informational view of what we're for, and then we'll ask you for some input through surveys of when we get to the needs assessment portion. But this summer, July 1st, our transition plan or our transition year will take effect. And 1920 will be our transition year with just pieces that will be required. And then July 1, 2020, the whole state plan and the whole plan will go into effect. So if we look at some of the changes, some of the biggest changes will be in definitions. I believe there were 28 new definitions in this law that were completely left out previously. So out of 55, that's a lot of definitions. And one of them will be the CTE concentrator. And most of us know that we talk about completers. All of our educators are familiar with completers. Well, all of the difference is in the terminology is a concentrator is a completer who hasn't graduated yet. So we are going to move forward discussing concentrators more, and we are going to move away from completers. And a concentrator will be a student who has taken 2 courses in a single program of study. That is different than we are used to. Okay, I just wanted to point that out. Also, the program of study has a large new definition and has some pretty difficult words that you're going to hear over and over. And one of those will be a non-duplicative sequence of courses and content that incorporates challenging state standards, addresses academic, technical, and skills, including employability skills, is aligned with the needs of industry, progresses in specificity, that's a new word, yep, specificity, beginning with all aspects of an industry or a career cluster, and has multiple entry and exit points, and it culminates with a recognized post-secondary credential, industry credential. And what we've been asked to do is increase our stakeholder involvement, and that's why we've asked you here today. And it'll even include, later we'll have public comment periods, as you saw on that timeline, where we will ask for your input and information to be given back to us so that we can develop our full state plan. And we are also going to see enhanced efforts to better serve our special populations. And in special populations is now also a huge definition. It is not what we traditionally think of, and it could be chronically underemployed, unemployed. It can be homeless individuals, youth from active military families. So those are some of the things that we can look forward to in this Perkins 5. Also, this is a really great time to encourage innovation. And we are going to be able to see that we're going to work with business and industry and look at those occupations and try to really align high skill, high wage, and in demand to be able to support our CTE programs. And as well as a new provision was that the middle grades are included. So grades 5 through 8, Perkins starts at grade 7. So we have a new provision that can allow for lower grades to be included. And then probably the biggest thing is requiring data-driven decisions. And we're going to see that over and over, which is going to be our needs assessment, that we take several things into account when we look at this needs assessment. So this local needs assessment has 5 major pieces. It must be updated every 2 years, and it could be required even more than that. And every Perkins dollar, no big deal. Just let me know if we see a funnel cloud. Okay. Perkins funds must be aligned to the local needs assessment. So I am going to reiterate, if it is not in your needs assessment, you can't ask for it. It has to be a need somehow and documented. First is student performance, and it takes into some of the same things that we are used to in our Perkins when we start talking about things like graduation, proficiency in language, arts, and math. We also have added science onto this one. We still look at placement of students. Non-traditional has been combined, so we're hopeful there that that will help us. But the biggest change that we see is that our technical skill attainment will now be a recognized post-secondary credential. So that is a little bit different for what we have done in the past. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. Program quality will also be part of this needs assessment. The size, scope, and quality, which we look forward to the state giving us some formal definitions on that, exactly what we need to be looking at, but that will also be part of it. Labor market needs, we're going to have to take into account all of the demand industry sectors and occupations, but also those even that might not be identified in some of that data that we see. It could be an emerging industry or new industry that hasn't been included in that data. And also to look at state boards and workforce development boards and what's going on, what's happening and what's developing to be a part of our needs assessment. Then we also have educator development. This is also a new part that we are looking to recruit, retention, and training of CTE, not just teachers, but individuals involved in that process of that student, from faculty, paraprofessionals, career guidance, academic counselors. It could be a large group, and individuals and groups underrepresented in professions, which could be those non-traditional fields when we have non-traditional teachers. And the biggest change that we talked about, I think, will be we are looking at access for special populations. We're really looking at equal access for individuals and also underrepresented, and any way that we can help to have high quality CTE programs and closing the gap with those students' levels of performance and how we can do that, and also prepare them to lead a self-sufficient life and how we can do that. And so we have invited a lot of different groups here, and there's a huge list that's required for Perkins 5 that you consult with and talk to, and that's why some of you are asked here today. It's going to go through all of our stakeholders, which is a large group, everyone that would be our school people, but it also takes into account paraprofessionals, career individuals, not just what teachers and administrators say of CTE programs. We also see representatives of state and local workforce development boards, parents and students that we've asked here today. Also, that special population is a very long list of individuals that could be a part of what we're doing. It could be individuals with disabilities, economically disadvantaged, preparing for non-traditional fields, single parents, out-of-work individuals, English learners, homeless, youth who are in or have aged out of the foster care system, youth with a parent who is a member of armed forces or on active duty. And then we also have representatives for out-of-school youth, homeless children and youth, at-risk youth, Indian tribes and tribal organizations where applicable. And then there's another list that Arkansas Career Ed may require, and some of those will include I'm not sure if this is the exact list of all of them, but the mayors and members of local governments, including city council, chamber of commerce, legislators, I didn't change that too soon, sorry. Community organizations, labor organizations, nonprofit, special populations. We also have some new individuals that we haven't always included in some of our planning and directing, and it could be minority serving institutions. It could be charter schools. Charter schools are included in Perkins 5. We also have state workforce development, representatives of business, industry sectors, labor organization, and legislative individuals that could be represented. And you could also represent a lot of different areas. You might represent 10 different areas on this list or more. When we look at the progression, we are really looking at trying to implement these CTE programs and programs of study through this local needs assessment, and it will have to be updated, and hopefully it'll be something that you can revisit as the time and as things are needed, or as industries emerge or things come up, that we'll be able to go back in and work with it. And really for us, this is a great time for opportunity. We have a great opportunity to change some things and work towards a more progressive CTE programs. It gives us the opportunity to really work with that business and industry and make sure that we are helping stay economically competitive. So I know that was very fast, and I promised them I would take 10 minutes or less. So at the end, we will have a time. If you have questions about Perkins, we have a great state staff here today that can also help answer, and I will do my best to answer those questions. Thank you. And I would like to introduce Starlinda Sanders from the Bentonville School District. She is the CTE director, and she will be moderating our panel today.
Okay, I'm sure you all heard that last alarm. Everybody's checking cell phones. I'm going to step off so that I can ask questions not to your back, but to the front. Dr. Rollins and his staff are checking the availability of rooms. We apparently are in the path of another storm that's anticipated to be here about 5:55 to 6. So they're checking rooms to make sure that we can shelter in place if we need to do that. In the meantime, while his staff is taking care of that, I'd like to ask the panel to introduce themselves. We're going to start over here. And if you would, tell us who you are and a little bit about, would you rather I start on that end? Tell us who you are and a little bit about what your stake is in this. How are you a stakeholder? I have to turn that on. Kelly? Is there a trick to this? Here. While she fixes it. Will that turn it on? Hello? Hello? Do you want to go ahead and slide it now?
Okay. Well, my name is Kevin Brumfield, and I'm a George Junior High student. So,
hi, my name is Maria Brumfield. I'm Kevin's mom.
Hello, I'm Nathan Wilkerson. I am a parent of this guy, and he is a student at George Junior High. I took your thunder.
My name is Jaden Wilkerson. I'm a student at the junior high, like he said.
Just in case, and I think we ought to be prepared, we are under a tornado warning. We've had this issue going on all afternoon, as you know. If the weather conditions worsen, we'll just go around this corner right here, and we have tornado shelter rooms just off this cafetorium. So we're just seconds away from a good, safe place. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Chad Burkett, agriculture teacher at Springdale High School, also a resident of Springdale, worked in the poultry industry prior to becoming an ag teacher.
Brian Pullen, Rogers High School, and I guess I have 3 hats. So 25 years prior, Walmart corporate, 2 years CTE teacher, and I have 2 teenagers in high school as a parent.
My name is Steve Cox, and I do economic development and workforce development for the Rogersville Area Chamber of Commerce.
I'm Perry Webb with the Springdale Chamber.
My name is Lance Eads. I work for the Springdale Chamber, and I'm also a state senator here in Arkansas.
Thank you all. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everybody to sign in. There's sign-in sheets over here. If you haven't registered, that becomes more important because as you saw from that list that Ms. Turner showed at the beginning of the presentation, we want a variety of stakeholders. We want excellent input from a variety of stakeholders so that we really are making progress in meeting the needs of our community and the workforce. I'm going to start with our business and industry panelists, and feel free to jump in, but if somebody would like to take the first question, how can educators support training and recruitment as we work with business and industry to meet the local workforce needs?
Sure, I'll be glad to.
And I did put a cheat sheet up there, so.
I was concentrating on number 2. I thought somebody else would go first. No, I'm just kidding. First off, the presentation made just previously showed an unemployment rate of 3.9%. And all of us up here in Northwest Arkansas know our unemployment rate's about half of that. We're hovering right at that 2.2, 2.3, which is beyond total employment. We recently had a feasibility study done and surveyed 61 business leaders across Springdale about their most important needs. 95% said workforce is the number one problem we have today. We cannot find anybody, period. End of discussion. There's nobody out there to work. It is a tremendously debilitating problem right now. Now, it's not fair for you to have to solve that, and you can't be the solution, but I think you do have to obviously be involved in whatever comes about down the road as far as trying to address those issues. 95% of the business community said this is the number one problem. How do you address that? Communication. I promise you we're not doing enough. And you may have good examples of communicating with your business community, and it's almost impossible to do it properly. Because here's what the reality is. The business community expects us to have an inventory of available workers trained to do what they need done and have them ready to call at their beck and demand, right? That's what the business community expects of you. But the problem is the business community doesn't know but about 6 weeks out what they need. So how can you possibly fulfill that? So I think the best solution is to communicate constantly with a sampling of your business community to find out what are the most important things we need in this community. We've done a lot of this over the last several years, and I will promise you the most important needed, demanded jobs in Springdale today are the hardest for you to address.
This is such a personal pleasure for me. I get to interrupt my chamber director. I don't get to do that very often.
He's been trying to do that for 25 years and never pulled it off.
This gentleman is one of my family members, I'll tell you. If you would, we'll try to come back and reconvene, but there is a funnel cloud in the area. Let's just get up and walk to a safe area. Thank you, Perry. It was fun, by the way. Thank you all very much. We've all been through unstable systems in our region, and we've kind of got that working throughout the evening. It does appear that we'll be okay to stay here till around 7, but I know that y'all have to travel home as well. But I believe the plans are to give the panel an opportunity and to share input. We'll complete about 7 o'clock and let y'all get home. Does that sound good? Okay. All right. Mr. Webb, please come back. Y'all give him a hand, bring him back. Will y'all do that?
Thank you.
I was going to cut you off, Rollins, but
Well, that'd be unusual.
but I decided better on it. Hey, I'll wrap it up real quick. Communication, as I said earlier. there's never going to be enough with the business community. The business community will not come look for you probably because they're very busy just like you are. So I think it is a mutual agreement that you have to communicate better.
Thank you. Would somebody else like to weigh in on that question?
I would definitely agree that it's all about open lines of communication, but not just communication with the industries, but a major thing that we see from a chamber perspective and issues that we see is communication with the parents. As someone who had drilled into their entire life, you have to go to college to get a good job. You have to go to college to get a good job. That's something my generation and the generation behind me has been told our entire lives, and that's just not true. There are great, wonderful, high-paying careers that are available that do not require a college degree. And so if there is communication, how do we change that stigma in the parents' minds that there are good career options, that just because your child is not college bound does not make him or her a special needs student, does not make him or her mean there's something wrong with that child. It just means that their aptitude and their skills are better suited to other endeavors. And again, there is a lot of technical, a lot of math, a lot of intelligence required to do skilled labor. So finding ways to better communicate that message with parents as well, that college is not the be-all, end-all for careers.
Just a quick follow-up. In terms of training and recruitment, how do educators support that for you? Because with so many industries in Northwest Arkansas, so many varied skills that you require, how do we support you in education and training for our students?
The best support at Springdale High School is when I go out and make contacts with community members. There's several in here that I've talked to, DC Sparks, Mr. Mike Rogers. It's incredibly important that we sit down. I spent an entire day with Mr. Rogers at Tyson. We talked about what the skills gaps were in industry for Tyson. And then I go back to the drawing board and try to figure out what skills I can interject in my classroom to meet those needs. More specifically, though, in developing partnerships with community members, it's really important to get those community members in my arena. So bring them in, they talk to the students, they talk about opportunities, and then we structure all of our curriculum to meet those needs. And it's nice to have a variety of different partners in that arena. For example, Mars Electric, they come in and he explained the kind of student he needed. And so we worked in our ag electricity class to tailor to the needs of Mars Electric, and he hired a graduate upon completion. Northwest Arkansas Sheet Metal, very similar, looking for a specific skill set. And so we support that training, but in turn, I need industry to come in because I'm not a journeyman sheet metal worker. But Mr. Nathan Pennington at NWA Sheet Metal is, and so he comes in and spends a day with my students, and in turn, he trains me, and they see the skill gap there, and they develop a relationship, and he notices students that are really good workers, and then he's like, I want that kid, and that kid knows him. And so it's very important to get folks to come in. If you're a business leader, we would love to have you in. It's really cool when you work alongside of students. You see what we do. You can teach me some things so I can better meet your needs. And out of that, I'm better able to support my community. In turn, you're able to train me, and I'm better able to train students in order to plug them into your business. But the coolest thing, I was talking to Mr. Rogers earlier. I was talking to some other community members and business leaders. It's really cool when I can develop a relationship to where I'm close enough and they understand what we're trying to do as a school, to where when I say, hey, this kid will work, he'll fit your needs, there's a mutual trust there. And then it's a really smooth transition, and it meets what Mr. Webb was talking about. They come to me, I need these guys, and then I can really go look for what they specifically need.
Can I switch over to students and parents for just a second with that? How important is it to you? How impactful? What is the impact for you in the classroom? Parents, what do you see in your student as a result of bringing business and industry partners into the classroom or doing field trips or other work-based learning experiences? Can you speak to that for just a little bit? Y'all just jump in. I know you've had guest speakers. Tell us what that means to you. How important is that to you in the classroom? Does it make learning more real for you?
That's not necessarily you, I'm just saying.
Do you want to pass on that one? Do you want me to come back to you? Okay, I'll pick another question for you. So let's move to one of our other stakeholders then. What key employability skills do applicants need to promote their success in the workplace, and how do you play a larger role in preparing those students for success? And I'm going to put my spin on this. We hear a lot of conversation about soft skills, or as we're beginning to call it in our district, professional practices. I think students might understand that a little bit better. What is your role in promoting that success for our students? Or what could it be, maybe?
One of the things I think moving forward in the business community that's going to be so important for our applicants as well is the ability to adapt. The days of somebody taking a position and doing the same thing in a career for 30 years are gone. And you see it in technology, and we see it in other aspects of business. The speed of change is increasing dramatically. And so for somebody who has the ability to adjust on the fly as things move a different totally direction maybe than they thought they were going to be going, is a huge benefit to make someone some more employable. And I think that we're going to see that as our businesses change, they're going to need to be able to do that. Our education system is going to need to be able to change quicker, and our applicants are going to need to be able to change and adapt quicker as well. And it's going to be so important moving forward.
Perfect. Would somebody else like to weigh in on that?
Yeah, Brian Pullen. So we were just at GLAD Manufacturing yesterday, and I had some students there with us, and we asked them basically that same question. And it's not new knowledge, but basically attitude is one of the key challenges that they have. So within the first 6 months, most of their people leave or aren't a good fit because of attitude or attendance. It's rarely ever technical skills, and they have a pretty diverse, array of jobs in robotics and, operator there. But generally, it's those core people skills, if you will, and teamwork skills that are causing people to lose out on $50,000 plus jobs.
Good deal. What partnership opportunities are available in business and industry that offers meaningful career and work-related experiences? Where do you see the opportunities that we're missing?
Well, the word liability got involved in this conversation about 10 years ago, and a lot of the liability underwriters and carriers have said they're not going to allow an industry to bring somebody in, specifically if they're under the age of 18. Dr. Rollins and I were in a meeting, and I don't know where Jim skipped out to. Oh, there he is. I was going to get you for leaving. Okay. Dr. Rollins and I were in a meeting about 3 weeks ago with a new hospital administrator here in Springdale, and he asked the question, how come your students aren't in our hospital anymore? And Dr. Rollins said, well, previously the administration said that became a liability and we couldn't put those kids back in the program. And he said, well, let's figure out how to do it. Point is, there are ways to do things. The easy answer is we can't do that business because it's a liability factor, but there are ways of making things happen like that. And I think that's on all of us to figure out where those wrinkles are. Maybe they don't have access to machinery, but that doesn't mean you can't have them in learning some skills in the office sector. The hospital administrator said, I have 7 disciplines in my hospital. We want all your students in all of your classes under those disciplines in our hospital, and they're not all medical. They're accounting, nutrition, industrial maintenance, and hospital maintenance. And so there's a variety of things they could do, construction that they could do. So I think we have to think outside the norm just a little bit and get outside the box. And quite frankly, there may need to be some legislation tweaked that would give some indemnification to some of those business communities in order to get those underwriters satisfied.
Yeah, that's been the big challenge is the insurance companies and saying, you can't do this because you're under the age of 18 and you don't, not workman's comp and things like that if there is an accident or an injury. Something that some employers in Rogers have started to do would specifically for the internship programs through the high schools is bringing them on as part-time employees. So that gets around some of those liability issues for that. And then there's also some ideas that I was fortunate to get to go to Chicago a few weeks ago to speak with other chambers from around the nation as part of a U.S. chamber chamber program. And there were some interesting things that other communities have been doing where they brought in their state's Department of Labor to the manufacturing facilities and to the employers. And they walked through with the HR rep, with the plant manager, with everybody, and said, someone under the age of 18 can do this, but not this. They can do this, but not this, and walked them through so they could do some internship opportunities and get the kids from high school in the classes without breaking any child labor laws and without worrying about any liability issues. So that's an opportunity we're looking to explore up here as well.
Are any of you, real quick, are any of you familiar with the ACT work keys and the career readiness certification? Have you had any of your jobs profiled to identify what level certification those students might be able to perform those jobs at?
So I know, I actually administer it, but I know some of the local industries, like I said, we were at GLAD yesterday, so they have a gold level as minimum entry level requirement to even apply at their organization. So here and there, we definitely have employers that are asking us to promote that and get students ready with it.
Just a quick show of hands. How many of you know what that means? You're familiar with the career readiness certificate and those levels of certification? Great. Great, thank you. And I believe you had a comment, sir.
I was just going to comment. There are opportunities to get around some of the liability. We ran into a lot of that in some places. You simply can't get through that. For example, I'm working on liability release waivers through Tyson's for a Mexican original visit for students that are 17. And so NWA Sheet Metal, their insurance underwriter would not allow students in. However, we were able to, through persistence and developing that relationship, talking with the owner over the course of about 6 months, he was able to get liability release waivers. So there's not an end-all, fix-all for that, but I do feel like as teachers and as community members, if you're truly vested in getting students in your facilities, we can work around and find ways. Another way that's really cool is my students can tour certain facilities if they have their OSHA 10 certification, because they actually have a federal, safety card that allows them to walk through the facility. And so there's a lot of opportunities if we try to find creative solutions. But I know Mr. Rogers has been integral in that, and I'd never really thought about, that avenue. And he said, we visited earlier this year, and he said, you just got to persist. And so as business members, as teachers, as leaders in your school district, if you work hard and develop those relationships, I assure you we can find a way to get students in these facilities.
And can I speak to the parents and students for a second? Do you have interest in any particular certifications or anything that you think might be important for you to make a transition from school into the workplace?
Is this working?
Mm-hmm. Yep, you can take it out.
I have interest in becoming like a welder or mechanic, and there are certain schools that you have to go to be certified for that type of thing. Like, I think the nearest, or one of the schools around here that you can go to learn like welding and metalworking things is like the NTI school. Mm-hmm. And then there's another one in Tulsa. And so you need certification for that type of thing.
So do you think that limits any of your opportunities by choosing to start with a certification?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe not?
Maybe not. Like, I know that, like for college, to get a degree in, like most things takes like 2 to 4 years, and to get like a certificate for welding only takes like 7 months. So it's a little bit like less limited than other career paths.
Sure. So it gives you a head start so that you can get out there and start, and then still, college is always an option. The next step is always an option.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to add anything to that?
I was just thinking of more certifications people should have. So like accounting as well, or, for like retail or cashiers doing math and, being a cashier to count on money and be able to do or help people with their groceries, things like that.
So just a good broad base
Yes.
of skills that you learn in all of your, what we call core curriculum classes,
Yeah.
that then you can use in any area. That's a good point. Thinking of your own industry, what are the relevant industry certifications for students to obtain as they prepare to apply for jobs in Northwest Arkansas? Are there some that are in more demand than others?
Just to touch again on safety certifications are very important. I think OSHA 10 is across the board now. I know a lot of contractors, in order to get on any kind of federal job, you have to have OSHA 10, some jobs OSHA 30. And so safety is always, the most important factor in any job site, whether it be, healthcare, construction, welding, plumbing, electrical. Additionally, I keep coming back to Mr. Rogers, but he's kind of led the way on certifications, and there's some really unique opportunities out there for students, and we actually have a variety of different certifications that are provided free, and based on what the students are interested in, I really don't think that we should limit students at all with certifications. I think they're all prevalent because even though, you may work in an office or healthcare, it doesn't mean that you might not need to have CPR training, or, if you're a nurse, you might need to understand how a simple circuit works. So basic understanding of electrical systems would be very beneficial. So we try to create opportunities. We set up our classes during certification training modules where students can pick and choose however they're certain that are required. And it just provides students with a wide array of skills. So because really, a lot of folks don't know what they want to do when they're 30 or 40. And so, if they can experience a lot of these different skill sets, then it helps them make better choices. It also makes them better employees, more employable.
Good deal.
I think in Northwest Arkansas, CNA is a very high demand certification that's there, and that's also nationally as well. It's in the top 3 most in-demand careers right now in terms of specific certifications. So that's one that plays a massive role with children's and their continued growth, with Mercy, with Northwest, Washington Regional, all the hospitals in the area continuing to grow, the clinics popping up. Medical and healthcare is a tremendous growth opportunity and tremendous career need as we move forward.
So the regulations for CNA instructors are housed not with the Department of Education or the Department of Career Education, but with the Department of Human Services. And so there is a legal requirement. I think this has been up for debate for a while. I don't know that we've really put it to bed yet, but there's a legal requirement that a CNA instructor must have 1 year of long-term care experience in the last 5 years to train CNAs. So one of the dilemmas we face in education is if we have well-qualified instructors who can train those CNAs in our medical professions courses. They may have bachelor's degrees, they may have worked for many years, but they've not had that 1 year of experience in the last 5 years. What are potential ways around that? What are potential fixes for that? Because this is not the first time we've heard CNA. That comes up in conversations over and over. And the second part of that question is, if we can't get past that, are there other trainings, other certifications that educators can focus on to meet that same type of need?
I'll let the senator handle that one. That sounds like a legislative question.
There's always the option of a legislative fix. So, I mean, that's what, in fact, I think there actually was a bill this
You picked
session.
up on that.
We talked about that. So there are ways to provide some flexibility within the system so we're not putting people in such a small and tight box that nobody's ever going to be able to, because let's face it, those people that are most talented in those fields oftentimes, they've got other jobs already, and so we need to be able to recruit new people into those fields to be able to even lead and teach and things like that. So there's always challenges of finding enough people to go around and do those things, especially when we put people in such confinements on people and make it so challenging for them to be able to create those opportunities.
Are there any other certifications that rival a CNA that holds the same skill set? Are you all aware of anything else that we might be able to substitute to meet workforce needs that we still might be able to work on in education?
I'm trying to think how to say this in a nice way. Sometimes I have trouble being very non-direct. Let me tell you what people need to be certified in. They need to be certified on how to pass a drug test. They need to be certified on doing 8th grade math and 9th grade reading levels, because that's what industry needs. Now, we can hang certifications out here all day long, and that does give a finish line and a completion of CTE training. I get that. And I see the importance of that. But the reality, where the rubber meets the road, 40% of the applicants at industry in Northwest Arkansas today cannot pass a drug test. 40%. That needs to be a certification, okay? You want to get into machining, you got to do 9th grade, I said it backwards a while ago, 9th grade math, Algebra 1, and an 8th grade reading level, and you can be trained to program a 6-axis machine and do machining, aerospace parts, making $62,000 a year. And there are kids coming out of Rogers that do that very quickly because of the immersion they have in that program there. So there are examples of success all across everywhere when you look at these programs. There's no magic certification, no certificate that makes it magic. It's got to be mama skills. You call them soft skills, I call them mama skills. It's what their mama should have taught them. Mama skills, pass a drug test, read on an 8th grade level, do 9th grade math, and they can do any job out there today. Industry will, business community will train them to do the job if they're a good worker. That's what we need to be certified in.
I agree. I mean, it's really up to the business if they think the certification is more important than the person. It's the quality of the applicant as much as it is the quality of the certification. And businesses want to train, and you got a lot of people, employers that will bring in someone if they want to further their career, they want to get a certificate, or they want to move into apprenticeship or journeyman training or things like that. You know, they will pay for their employees to go to college and further their career as long as they continue to work or get that next level of certification. So almost every major industry in Northwest Arkansas has some form of educational assistance for their employees.
And I would add one other thing.
News.
The employers will also teach the classes to give your kids the certifications that are needed. That goes back to communication and involvement, and they will pay the bills to make a better employee opportunity.
Outstanding. So from our students and parents, have you heard anything here today that's maybe especially impactful for you, or something you might need to take home and think about? Things that you maybe didn't know before you got here today.
It's definitely helpful to know that like there are jobs that you can get without having to go to a college. Like, it is helpful to go to college. That, like, I think opens your opportunities more, but like it's not 100% necessary. It's not like you won't ever get a job without a college degree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's helpful, especially, considering him and his prospects, what the guys there were saying, that a lot of times you may look at job boards and things and see the job and think, well, I'm just not qualified to do that and not apply. So, it's helpful to think that, he could apply to something and be trained, just kind of prove himself. I guess the question I would ask would be, how do employers know that this person who isn't necessarily qualified is a worthwhile investment? How do you hire somebody without seeing, yeah, you're certified here and you've done that, and to know that they're a worthwhile investment, enough that you're going to bring them on and train them? How do you know that in the first place?
That's a great question.
I think they're going to depend on, for lack of a better term, a reference through the relationships that you have with the schools. If a teacher goes to bat, the point made a while ago, if the teachers go to bat for a kid, that is a absolute door opener. Because I promise you there's some kids they won't go to bat for. And so if they're honest about that relationship and can evaluate the kid based on how they perform, there's not a whole lot of difference. If you look at it, quite frankly, there's not a lot of difference between performing in the classroom and performing in the workplace. It's all about doing the job you're charged to do in the right way and following instructions. And so I think the references that teachers can give will be the best absolute answer.
I guess the question that I would ask the educators would be, how do you communicate that to the business leaders? It's obviously, it's informal, just the relationships, but a lot of the outcomes in education is generally more academic, college-driven, transcripts, GPAs, standardized testing scores. Is there a mechanism whereby you can rate the employability of someone who's on a vocational track, maybe a school resume or something like that?
Do any educators like to field that for us? Because this really is just a discussion. Let me give you this.
Our English teacher this year, she had all the seniors create a senior portfolio that included community service that they've done, as well as a resume, and they had to have 3 letters of recommendations, 2 from teachers and 1 from someone in the community. So that's one way, and we have quite a few seniors who are planning on going right into the workforce instead of going into college.
I'd like to add to that. We require all of our students starting at sophomore year to have a mentor, and that personal mentor needs to be somebody in the business community, not a relative. So it starts that relationship. And I teach engineering, so I get phone calls from business partners that I've developed the relationship with, and you can't do it without that relationship, but they will describe exactly what type of candidate they want. These are the skills I'm looking for. Do you have a student that fits that mold? And I tell my students, you are interviewing for your first job every day that you come and see me, because people are asking for you, and they're asking me to vet you before I send your name on. So my biggest recommendation for you 2 young gentlemen is to reach out and find a mentor. And at your ages, that's a really hard thing to do, because you have to talk to an adult that you don't know, and it's a relationship that adults are eager to be part of, and students find that really difficult. And the sooner that you can develop that relationship, the sooner that you're going to see the benefits from that. I had a student that drug her feet to get a mentor. She found an engineer, and now she's going to be working on a graduate project as a senior in high school. So it's more common than you think. You just have to get out and find a mentor.
And to our students and our parents, is that, how well do you think students make the connection between performance in the classroom translating into performance in the workplace? Do you think students see that connection? Do you think they take it seriously, the classroom seriously, knowing what you've heard from some of the employers?
You think your classmates see the connection between the grades and their performance in the classroom and their job? Can you say that again?
So listening to the employers and our comments here that perform in the classroom, get a mentor, get recommendations, and then that performance in the classroom translates into the workplace. Do you think students really get that?
I think maybe not as much, because maybe some students are, don't take it as seriously as much as others would do. And that can come from, not learning to take it seriously from, their peers or even their parents. So
That's a good point. And this is just for the audience in general. What information, and audience, panel, parents, everybody, what information can educators and school districts share with parents, share with industry partners, community leaders, to increase the knowledge of the current workforce demands and employment trends? I know I have students all the time say, I didn't even know that job was out there. I didn't even know I could do that. I didn't know I could be that. What can educators and districts do to get that information out there better? And you all may have some great ideas for this.
Well, I'm thinking more for kids or students who are in the academies, having student career days, so that students that are in academies can come talk to younger students that are below them in grades about what they're studying, and then what they're studying can open up for them. So like what jobs they're able to take from what they're studying, so that the students who are in lower grades can notice that, oh, that job exists as well, not just being an astronaut or a vet or a police officer.
So my follow-up to that, since you say those three things, do you feel like students recognize primarily the careers they see on television, or do you think they really realize the things that are out there, the opportunities that are available to them?
I think, seeing what, for example, like what kids see on TV, they can mostly see like fire departments and police officers. So like, oh, that's a cool job to take. I'll do that when I get out of high school. But then they just kind of set themselves on that and not, open up their mind to something else.
Anything you all can think of to cause students to open their minds up to something else? Anything we can do to help that?
Business careers and, business fairs and more career days, I guess.
Okay.
That can help.
Do any of our partners have ideas? Because I know you all probably have students that have come through the education system.
Well,
in
one
Northwest
thing I would
Arkansas.
say is we talked earlier about making sure that as educators, people are out in the business community learning what's important and relevant and current. The same thing, if you think about the state's gotten more and more flexible about allowing people to bring in people into the education world from business and industry to actually teach and to present and share. And we have some of the top businesses in the world right here in Northwest Arkansas who recruit some of the top talent in the world. And so if we have the ability, we need to be making sure that we're bringing those people into our classroom, and so that the students see firsthand who these people are, what the possibilities are for all these different jobs and businesses that we have in this area that they could do. That's not us talking down to them or talking at them about something. It's somebody who does that every single day, and they see what the opportunities are in that particular field. So important.
That's a great point. How do we improve access to career and technical education programs as we promote equity for all students? And again, back to that list of all of our stakeholders. How do we improve access for all students? And this really may be a question for some of our audience, for some of our parents. How do we promote the access? How do we raise awareness? How do we make the connections between here's the career, here's the certification or the credential or the training or the college, and get that information out in the most usable way for you? So we can bring industry into the classroom. We can have more career fairs, business fairs. Anything else we can think of? Any missed opportunities?
I know in my classroom, we try to have, we've had 20, 30, I don't know, maybe 40 different businesses in. It's incredibly important for industry to get in front of our students so they can make a connection. They need to see pictures, videos, know what they do, know what earning potentials are. And then we need to get on site. And so touring facilities, students see things. And then on top of that, what breeds success in programs, for example, Springdale High School agriculture program, we had 850, 900 course requests this year. Students want to take our program because when you link students to industries, well-paying jobs, or you send them to post-secondary institutions, they get degrees and they get good jobs. Word of mouth spreads and success breeds success. So student that just got hired by Mars Electric making a really nice wage, going to get all of his tools paid for and taken really good care of. A 10th grader comes up, what do I need to do to get that same opportunity? And so you have to really work hard on the front end, and it's a lot of work keeping up with all the contacts and getting all these site visits. Industry, we need folks to come in, spend time with us, be gracious with our students. Then once you start the process, once the ball gets rolling, students want to do what other people have done, be successful. It's just like watching your favorite athlete, and it comes home when, this kid goes to the military, or this kid goes to work to weld, and this kid comes back and he's made $2,500 in a week welding in San Antonio on a stainless steel pipeline. That really drives home the opportunity. And so that breeds success and student interest. So it's really easy once you get the ball rolling and you make those partnerships and connections.
Good deal. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I think, one critical awareness point is because students obviously sign up for the classes a year before they take them, but having 2 teenage daughters, I can tell you, you may estimate the amount of thought that goes through a student's mind when they pick their classes for the next year.
You may be right.
I think critical marketing and awareness happens the year before the next school year, and telling them why it's important to take certain pathways in classes versus just their friends being in them, or they had this available in this hour. I mean, there's a host of reasons they take classes that don't align with career or college. And so just better marketing of the benefits of the program and what's available.
That's a great point. My last real question, what does 21st century career and technical education look like in Northwest Arkansas? Because what I've learned is Northwest Arkansas is its own animal. It's not like anywhere else in the country. So what does a 21st century workforce look like in career and technical education?
One thing that I always try to make my students aware of, since I spent much time in corporate, is they're not really just competing with Northwest Arkansas. They're not even competing with the state of Arkansas or the 4-state area. Literally, if you're at Walmart or Tyson or J.B. Hunt, you're competing with the best talent they can convince to move to Northwest Arkansas. And that's all the way from entry level to the next promotion to the next officer. And so they need to sharpen their game to the point that they're not just the best in their school or the best in their region, but the best of anyone that's willing to come to Northwest Arkansas.
That's a great point.
I think something that we do as a region very well, and it kind of goes back to what Perry and Lance had said earlier, it's communication and it's flexibility. I feel that the schools see that this is a budding career, this is a new opportunity, and they're willing to create a new program. They're not just locked and rigid and saying, this is what we've always offered, so this is what we're going to offer. And so there is some flexibility built into that through the trainings to adapt to more in-demand careers and careers that could be moving in the future. And then there's really good communication. We can do a lot better, but we're better than most areas in the rest of the state in terms of creating those partnerships between the businesses and the industries and the educators. And again, that's stuff we still need to improve on, and all the chambers up here are working heavily on that. But I think we do have a leg up on a lot of other areas in the country and in the state.
Good deal.
I heard the other day, this was actually in a workforce report, and it said if you're up to date today, you're obsolete, because the dynamic is changing so fast. If you're up to date today, you're obsolete. And so I don't know the answer of what it's going to look like. I will tell you it's going to be more efficient. It's going to be more driven by the business community. I don't know what driven means. I just know that that's the way it's going to be done. It's going to be less likely to have post-secondary education as far as college education. You know, the numbers say 23% of the jobs in 5 years will require a college degree. I'm not very smart, but that's 77% that won't. Okay, so I think those are trends that we see nationally that are taking place worldwide, actually, that are taking place that are not probably going to stop. I personally think it's going to be higher. It's going to be higher based on aptitude and interest instead of a 16, 15, 12, 9-year-old. I saw one study starting the 3rd grade with aptitude testing and education of parents. I didn't know what I was going to do my 3rd year of college. How's a 16-year-old or a 14-year-old really know? And so I think aptitude is absolutely going to have to be highly prevalent, and measuring that aptitude on a not annual but a multi-annual way. I mean, 10 times a year, once a month. I don't know how you measure that, how you measure change in aptitude. But aptitude testing sorts through the clutter and gives access. There may be a lot of kids that need to be in CTE who, it was said earlier, their parents won't let them do it because the parents don't know, and because they don't know the kid has an interest in welding. But it's really there. And I think that's going to have to be a big part of the base of any kind of program going forward.
One thing that I think that we have to look at is the way education looks like, as opposed to a road that has a start and a stop at some point, and it has to move more towards like a merry-go-round where you can get on and get off at different times as you see opportunities, you want to participate in something, and then get out and get into the workplace, hop back on if you want to go to another area, so that that's constantly moving and you have multiple opportunities to jump in and jump out, and that's going to help us keep up with the speed of the change, I think.
Good. We have a couple of minutes for questions. Are there any burning questions in the audience that we haven't covered? I know we haven't touched on everything. And I'm going to hand this to you. Would you stand up when you ask, please?
I'm Tony from DC Sparks, and thanks for the shout-out, Chad. I appreciate that. I have about 40 questions. Do we have time for that? So the first one is, as I was looking through the overview, are the students going to be involved in that process? And you talked about needs assessment and data-driven analysis. Just having the students sit next to whoever's going to be on the panel to understand the process is an education process in itself, because somebody may get excited about data analysis or statistics or things like that. So that was just one question, if the students are going to be on there. The way I see it, and I'm sorry, I have a mic and I'm not going to give it up. So what I see is it's a branding issue, right? I look at it from a marketing standpoint. You have a product, and you're trying to get that product in front of the consumer, which is the businesses, and it's more of a marketing issue and trying to figure out how to brand this. So Brad and I were talking about doing signing days, where you promote the fact that this student has now signed on to go to NTI, or this student has now signed on to be working for Mars, or maybe someday DC Sparks, or Tyson, or wherever, and promote that as a really good thing for that student, and then that publicity gets out. There was an educator over here who talked about mentorships. Well, how about getting with NTI and NWAC and finding out those students that have just graduated from high school are now in a program and using them as mentors? Because talking to the old guy in the room is not going to do it for a student. But if they're talking to somebody who's only 1 or 2 years older than them, it could be an opportunity for them to see the light and see the options that weren't on there. The other thing is, you asked, we're talking about businesses, how students can set themselves apart from the other students. And another educator over here talked about community involvement. Working with a nonprofit, there are very little age restrictions in most of the nonprofits. And so volunteerism shows an employer the capabilities of that student to do things aside from schoolwork, where you have to work for a nonprofit and have a project and a deadline and a budget and all that stuff. So I don't really have any questions. I just have comments. Sorry. The issue of the certifications and CNA, there should be or could be an opportunity where the students could be trained and taught what is needed for a CNA certification, and then maybe the program could be changed so that the students could then test out of a lot of the requirements, because now they've had 2 years of CNA training in a high school. And then when they meet the age requirement, instead of them having to go through the 2-year program, they can volunteer at a hospital and get credits or get, credits or get get hours towards that, and so that they wouldn't be starting from ground zero when they graduated to get into the CNA program. Like Perry mentioned about soft skills, it's not just the high school graduates. We're dying for people that are in their 20s and 30s to understand what work is. And so part of it, sorry, I have the mic, but part of it is the misalignment of expectations. So you have those students that are going to a 4-year college, and maybe the education process could do better at aligning the expectations that even if they go to a 4-year college, we have applicants coming that have a 4-year degree from a construction management program, have never been on a construction site, and they expect to be the project manager when they graduate. And so it's just a complete, so they're thinking they're going to go to college and get this $60,000 a year job when they don't even know the business end of a screwdriver. So being able to, again, I just look at it as branding. If we could brand the supply of product and align it with the business needs, I think there's a better opportunity. So I, myself, am willing to talk to any educator, come to any school, and do whatever we can to be part of this process.
As they say in the movies, I hope you got that on film. I don't know that we took that many notes. Those are great points. Some of those I've heard mentioned before, some I've never heard that. How many educators in the room have a signing day of some sorts at your school for anything other than athletics? Outstanding. Who's here from Bentonville schools? So Bentonville West today held their signing day. And it was run just a little bit like the NFL draft, except they didn't have T-shirts, but they flashed up the alma mater of the college they were going to and their fight song. And then when it came to those students that had already had meaningful employment lined up, those were the guys that were going pro. They went pro. They're already in. They've got the job. They're in. So I can say, on behalf of our school district at least, that is a very important way to recognize your seniors. I think for many, many years we've recognized those athletes that are going on, but if you look at the number of athletes that are going on as compared to the number of students that are going on to something, whether that's college, whether that's Tulsa Welding Academy, whether that's into the workforce, they're all going somewhere. There was a gentleman at the State Department, he used to say, enlist, enroll, or employ. Those are the 3 E's that we're looking for, enlist, enroll, or employ. So, does anyone else have a question? Okay, so here's sort of next steps. I will speak also to your involvement of students. Students will be a part of the process. They're part of the panel today, as are the parents, but we will continue to have additional stakeholder meetings. We will have those in small groups. We may have more in large groups. We may have some of those in industry-specific areas, but this is the start of the conversation, not the end of the conversation. And in Northwest Arkansas, it's a very important conversation. So next steps are expect surveys. Expect invitations to smaller events and maybe, again, some larger events as well. So if there are no other questions, I'm going to turn this over to Ross White from Siloam Springs to close us out before we have to shelter in place again.
We've done it. I'm Ross White, Siloam Springs School District. I'm their CTE director. First, we want to thank you all for coming and sheltering and all of the above. We've had enough of that today. I think our biggest piece we take with this is Perkins 5. It does so much with the stakeholders, and everybody in this room represents multiple stakeholder pieces, and I think that's the part we need to look at from an educator to our business and industry to our parents and students. Those groups mean a lot, and a lot of the things that we heard tonight resonate with me on 3 things, and that first one's relationships, and that includes everybody from the parents to the students to the teachers to the administrators to the business and industry. We have to form those relationships, and so many of us in this room have done that and continue to do that, but then to take those relationships to the next level of partnerships. And we have to partner and we have to work together for the best for our students, because what I always say to my teachers and I say to our business industry is it's all about return on investment. Okay, what are we investing in these kids and how is that going to benefit us? How is it going to benefit our community? How does it benefit our state, and so on? So that second piece of the relationship to the partnership, but then the third piece is to the opportunity. We can have all the relationships we want. We can have all the partnerships we say we have, but if we're not giving them opportunity to grow with it and move forward, then where are we? And so I think that's a big piece with Perkins 5, and I think as a state, we're moving in the right direction to really grow those 3 pieces. But that's what I want to leave you with, is to think about what are those relationships, how are they forming those partnerships, and then what are those opportunities for our kids in their future. So safe travels home, and hopefully you all have a great evening. We appreciate you being here. Thank I think I already turned it. The Springdale School District for hosting us today. We really appreciate that as well.